Alright, so I'm not gonna get into my review of the Avengers Endgame. I've already done it. I wrote it for my site at www.Talk-Saicam.com. You can easily find it. It's like I said, it's a written one, so you can read it right there. It's a non-spoiler one. If you want something without spoilers, this is gonna be more spoiler heavy. For this, I didn't really write anything down, so I'm just going at it as I'm talking. So you're probably gonna hear a bunch of little mistakes. I'm not really here trying to get more directing. It's just me talking about my feelings and thoughts on Avengers Endgame without um without restraints, because Avengers Endgame, of course, was being hidden by the public for the public. Um, for most of it, I mean, there was some stuff there. There was even some leaks, but for the most part, it was something that they were trying to avoid showing off too much, and I understand why. It's one of those things where it's like you want to kind of experience it right on the spot, and there is some real surprises. Though anyone who had access to the internet probably could see some of the stuff coming already, not just because they kind of hinted at it with other movies, but mostly because you know since it was a year between the two movies, there was already rumors about, like, okay, here's an on-set photo of this, here's an on-set photo of that. um you know Nothing that really gave much away, but it was to a point where it's like, okay, I can kind of figure out what we're going with, what's going to happen. And for the most part, there's still some surprises, though. You still get the idea of, like, okay, I kind of heard about this beforehand. So, you know what, that's just a quick, preamble, entrance into this video, whatever, intro. We're gonna start doing spoilers, so again, if you haven't seen the movie, I would recommend you go watch the movie. If you want to hear my thoughts on it, go read my review on it. I have the link below. Um, Go ahead and do that. Main reason why I'm doing this is, even though I haven't done really spoiler reviews elsewhere, is because I do feel like this one really relies on it in order to fully explain my thoughts. Because I do feel that original review, even though it explains what I feel about it, it doesn't really go into detail because it can't. So I'm gonna be talking about that now. So one, two, three, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. You know the deal. So let's get into it. My biggest gripe against Avengers Endgame, and look, I really love this movie. Um, if it's a score of 1 out of 10, it's an 8. It's 3.5 out of 4. It's an almost perfect movie, really, for me. You know, my biggest gripe has always been that I do kind of feel like you have to watch the other ones in order to fully appreciate this. And not that, of course, with any sequel you can get that, especially with, a movie that has 21 movies preceding this. But I do feel that the Marvel movies have generally been pretty good about not needing to watch the other ones in order to get what's going on in the one you're watching. Like, even Infinity War, which was a massive thing and had a bunch of things going on, had something that made sense for it. And excuse any sound that you're hearing. I can't really control that right now. Um, but yeah, so Infinity War was a little more standalone for me. I mean, of course, it had stuff like, I know people who argue that characters didn't really get full intros, but I'm like, they got it enough to where even if you weren't a fan of, say, Spider-Man, the Guardians, you kind of knew who they were just based on what they were showing off when they first pop in. So you kind of get enough info about who's who. This one, there's really a lot where it's like, yeah, I don't think if you're a fan of the other ones, if you're not a fan of the other ones, that you might be missing out on. But that's kind of a minor gripe. It's not like to a point where it fully ruins it, but it is like the most recurring thing, like the easiest thing I can tell someone, even without spoiling the movie, that I just did not really like about this one. But I can get over it because I'm like, look, it's the 22nd movie. There is some leeway here. Again, I would appreciate it more if it, you know, went away from that. But I get it. From a story's perspective, something that I've been saying for a while now, even for Infinity War, is that I do kind of wish that James Gunn had more involvement in the story, because the writing is great. I'm not saying that the writing is bad, and even the way the Guardians are portrayed are good, but it just feels a little weird that sorry, it just feels a little weird that a story that has a villain that is connected to his characters. Yeah, I mean, I know it's Marvel characters, but realistically, he created these versions of the characters. Doesn't have as much input from them. Like in the first in Infinity War, the first part of this Avengers finale, you do get a lot with Gamora, which I liked, and I do feel that they could have done it a little better, but I did like that there was plenty of Guardians to go around there, even if I could feel like it could have gone better. With this one though, with Endgame, just so we're clear, it's a lot more because I expected Rocket to actually be hit hard by the fact that he lost pretty much everyone he knew, with the exception of Nebula, who wasn't really a part of his team anyways. So I thought that was going to be a major focus of the story, and it's there, but it doesn't really get delved into, which I kind of, that was kind of lame. I mean, he does get a moment with Thor where he's like, "Look, I lost everyone, so imagine how much it hurts for me." But it's not something that really affects it all that much. Nebula, on the other hand, I thought was really underutilized compared to what I expected. Like even with Rocket, even though I wanted them to explore that, I knew it was like, okay, he's not gonna be the main character or anything like that, but it'd be something to do. With Nebula, on the other hand, since the last one focused so much on Gamora, I thought, okay, this one they're gonna focus more on her, which they do. I'm not gonna lie, they do focus more on her, but it's more for plot reasons than for emotional reasons, which I kind of disliked. Um, I don't think there's anything bad about it. I don't think that she's like Karen Gillan, who's great in the role, is bad in this one. I mean, she's great. It's just that it's like, okay, you get the intro with her and Tony out in space, and it's like, okay, that's cool. We get a little charming moments there. We get her on Earth, and eventually she goes with the Avengers to basically get all the Infinity Stones from the past, because of course there's time travel in this. Um, if you didn't see the movie and are just now watching my review of my spoiler review of this, guys, I'm not gonna go into detail by detail of how this all works out. I am just gonna tell you exactly what's going on. So if you're wondering like why I'm skipping certain things, that's because I am assuming that you've already seen the movie. Anyways, so Nebula, goes along with this whole thing, but again, she doesn't really get any emotional moments. Like, I mean, she does eventually meet up with the past Gamora and convinces her to go good. And it's fine, but I kind of feel like if James Gunn had been involved with this, it would have been more heartfelt, and the arc right there was kind of missing. Like it just it felt like, okay, so this is good. Nebula, she's mean, but she is caring, but we don't really get much out of that, and it's kind of disappointing. Like if you know there's a big story thing that I feel like more people should be talking about is how Endgame does not address Nebula all that much. Like I thought she was gonna have a bigger impact to the story beyond just being the reason why past Thanos, comes into play, and why there's a whole war at the end. Which makes you wonder, like, okay, if she had been left out of the time travel thing, would um, Thanos had even been involved, or if she was among the people that went to like the Avengers section, like the 2012 section, which I thought was really well done. Um, if she would have just not, if Thanos wouldn't have come into play because of that, I don't know, just something that I had to wonder, but whatever. I've already said my piece. I do feel like they could have gotten James Gunn to make it a lot better. It's not bad. It's just missing that emotional touch that it really needed. Um, and then as for other emotional things that land, just not as much. There's also the deaths of the main characters. Um, you have Iron Man, which we all expected. I mean, people were saying it since last year. since before Infinity War. They thought that he would have either died in Infinity War or Endgame. So not really a surprise, but I do think it's very well done. I came close to crying, but I think what held me back was that we already kind of saw it coming. There's of course Black Widow, which I didn't have a problem with it. Again, I didn't feel that emotional about it. I was just more confused. Like, okay, so this is confirming that the Black Widow movie is going to take place in the past, unless she magically gets revived. But I don't think that's going to be the case. Um, More or less, what I had noticed at that moment is that and when I first saw that in theaters, even though I had been enjoying the movie at that point, and I still really do. Again, it's an 8 out of 10 for me, or a 3.5 out of 4. You know what? I really don't like review scores, but point is, it's a near perfect movie for me. I think Infinity War is better, but this one is near perfect. Um, that was at the moment where I just kind of realized, like, I am not liking this as much as Infinity War, and I can't really pin down. I mean, I could pin down why, for the most part, right now, but at that moment, as I was sitting down, I was just like, I'm not enjoying this as much. I mean, it is entertaining. It is, you know, fairly solid, and this moment is pretty strong. It's just, I don't know, just the emotion was drained for me, and I don't want to blame that on the runtime because I'm like, look, I've seen all the Lord of the Rings movies, and I love the shit out of them. I love Django Unchained. I really enjoyed the Hateful Eight, so it's kind of like, can't really say, like when I got past examples of, you know 3 hour long movies, I can't really say that that's the issue here, because I mean, excuse me, because even then, this movie for a 3 hour movie goes pretty fast. I mean, I know that it's 3 hours, but it does move pretty fast along the way, so it never feels like I'm being dragged along. But yeah, that was like at the moment where I started realizing, like, I am not enjoying this one as much. I don't know why. I know, of course, I know a little more why now, but at that moment, as I was sitting down, I just felt kind of like, I don't know, just not doing it for me. I mean, it's working, it's fine, it's suitable, it's fine, it's working. Does not to the degree where it matters to me. But I've been negative enough. I mean, I know this is running pretty long, and I didn't expect it to run this long. But hey, it's a long movie. Um, so I enjoyed the movie. So, how about positives? Let's, you know, I've already got my minor gripes aside. Again, I consider these minor gripes because none of it is functioning awful. It's just stuff that keeps it back from what works. So of course I love the fact that they were able to get so many people back. I'm not just talking about like, oh, they brought all the heroes back to life, which again we kind of already saw coming because there's a Spider-Man movie coming out this summer, which I know Marvel couldn't do anything about it. That was really more of a Sony thing, but still, kind of wish it would have been further down the line to kind of keep up the facade. I mean, we all knew it was coming even without that, but just kind of keep it up for maybe people who aren't, geeks, if we're being honest, because of course people who are just regular movie going audiences, they might not know what's going on, but you know they actually got a lot of the people back that I just didn't expect to ever see again in any of these movies. Like, you got Tilda Swinton back for Doctor Strange. Like, at most, if she were to come back, I just figured it might have been for Doctor Strange 2, not for this one, which I really love seeing her in here. It was a great scene. You got Robert Redford back, who again I just did not expect to see in any of these movies, cause especially considering that he's already said that he's officially retired. So I don't know if they filmed this before or just a little bit after, and they just told him like, hey, look, we just need you for a minute long scene of sorts where you're just interrupting Tony Stark, just talk a little bit. It's not nothing too bad, but it is nice to see that. And we get stuff along the way like that. Um, for the most part, I just love seeing all these people back because it not only makes it feel epic, but it also just really fills out that this is a universe, because you're expecting like, okay, if they're just going back in time, and if they're just not interacting with anyone outside themselves. It just makes it feel weird. Natalie Portman was back, which I didn't expect. I thought that, I need to go back to see Thor: The Dark World, see if that's maybe just footage from that movie, or if they actually just got her just for a few seconds and were like, look, we know you don't want to do with these movies anymore, but look, just do a short little scene just so we can get, a little moment, and it's a funny moment. I mean, it leads into one of my favorite visual jokes and references to the other movies along the way. Um, in terms of the main cast, I've already mentioned it. Everyone's good on it. I don't think I went into full detail. Well, I wouldn't have gone in full detail with my non-spoiler review, but everyone's good. But the ones that like really stood out to me like were like Thor, because in this movie you actually get that arc that I was expecting out of him, which I loved. Is that he's kind of disappointed by his own failure to the point that um, in this movie when it jumps 5 years into the future, um, he's a massive drunk. He's just fat. He's a loser. People point out that he looks like the dude from The Big Lebowski, which I thought was hilarious. So I love that stuff, especially because it's like, yeah, this is really feeling like that. You know, Thanos got to him, and it's not something that you get with everyone. But then again, you see different people handling things differently. So it is interesting to see, like like also Professor Hulk, like Mark Ruffalo is like now fully CG Hulk. He's pretty much become one and the same. Bruce Banner and the Hulk are now just one person, and it works. I think it really does. It's just a great way to handle that. It's you know something that we haven't really seen in the movies before, so it is fun, and it looks like that's going to be his character from now on if he still comes back to these, which it looks like he will. I mean, it doesn't really seem like there's any reason why he wouldn't. Um, of course, Iron Man gets the big moment of having to sacrifice himself, but you see him with a kid, and I thought all the moments where you see him with his daughter were cute. Like at times, I was kind of like, is the daughter good at acting? Is she not? But I think at least the daughter character in this movie, Morgan Stark, was really cute for what it was here. Captain America, of course, is Captain America, and he's always great. He gets to finally have his dance at the end. He sacrificed, well, not really sacrifices, but he decides like, okay, after I'm done with this job, I'm just gonna stay in the past and grow up to be, well, live a peaceful life, which I thought was a really cute way to end this story off, which you know kind of negates everything with the whole Agent 13, the niece or whatever it was of Peggy Carter, which I mean, I guess it sucks, but no one really cared about that as far as I knew, and I don't want to diss it because I enjoyed it fine, but I know it wasn't one of those things where people really were too supportive of. I mean, me personally, even though I enjoyed it, I'm like, yeah, I still prefer the Peggy Carter stuff, so made sense to kind of dump that. Yeah, of course, you get the final battle, which is just awesome. I mean, if there's one scene that could have topped the first Avengers, like the feeling you got from the first Avengers movie when you see the 360 spin with all the Avengers together, was seeing all the Avengers together for this big massive battle just showing up, at the moment where we were thinking like, oh no, Thanos is gonna win, and you see everyone just showing up in armies. Howard the Duck is there, which I did not notice in the first round until someone pointed out, like, yeah, he's there if you pay attention to like when the Wasp is popping by, and sure enough, he's like, oh yeah, he's there, and you know what? That almost bumped it up to a perfect score for me because I love Howard the Duck, but yeah, just a lot of cool moments in that whole fight scene. Thanos himself, though, I've heard different arguments. Some people didn't really care for him in this one because most of the time we're dealing with past Thanos. Like we get the Thanos that we know, taken care of at the start of the movie, which I, really enjoyed and was kind of surprised by. But I really love that they did that. Having past Thanos show up, I get the issues that people have. Overall, I do kind of enjoy it because it kind of kind of creates the argument that people were trying to make of like, oh well, would his plan even work? Blah blah blah. And he even mentions like, okay, now seeing my future and what's come about with you guys trying to kill me, I know that yeah, if I do this whole, you know, kill half the population thing, it ain't gonna work because there's still gonna be people who are gonna remember it, who are gonna be resisting. It wouldn't work. I mean, there's other ways that you could argue it not working, which I kind of hope that we would explore in this one. But I like that we got that. To kind of go back into the negativity, just because I forgot some things. Um, One thing that's been brought up about the Russo brothers, who are I think great directors. I mean, their movies, if nothing else, have been shot really well for the action, the character work, and whatnot. But if nothing else, the one thing that's been a recurring problem is that you don't really get too much of like the normal people point of view, like the people that are just watching by, and whatnot. Like if you look at the first two Avengers, especially the second one, you do get reactions of people who are being damaged by what's going on, and they're just actually reacting to this stuff. Some of them are mad, some of them are supportive, all that stuff. um this one, it does a little bit better than Infinity War did, which I'll give it that much, but you still don't really get much of the regular people view on post snap, the post snap world, which again, you get like the little meeting that Steve has, like it's like an AA kind of thing, and you get the one of the Russos right there, as a gay character, which I heard people have problems with. I don't necessarily have them, but I get where people are coming from. I do think that they could have done better, but I do feel like I've seen it done worse, so I don't know if I can really complain about it. But I'm probably not the best person to ask on whether or not that scene was well done or well not. I'm really not. I'm not gonna pretend like I am. I'm not. But beyond that, it's like you get like shots of like Scott Lang when he goes to see whether or not his daughter is still alive. Like there's all these murals, which I'm like, okay, this is a great scenery to give you an idea of like how many people were lost. It's like just rows and rows of these tall towers, with people's names on that, and you see people looking at it, and I kind of felt like, what would have made the scene a little bit better. And I know you're already adding on to something that's 3 hours long, so yeah, I get why you wouldn't want to try to add too much, but it still would be a nice thing to add in if possible. Was if someone maybe recognized him as an Avenger, like they were like, hey, wait a second, aren't you the guy who grew big? And maybe started insulting him because they're like, oh, because of course they probably don't know which Avengers were alive or dead, or which ones were fighting against Thanos, and just started getting mad on him, calling him out like, hey, you could have stopped this, your Avengers could have stopped this, but you didn't. I feel like that scene could have been useful in this because it is kind of like, what does what do the Avengers, people think about the Avengers, but never really happens. And I'm not gonna lie, could have used it, but uh you know I've already gone long enough. Let's go back to the positivity, just close things off. Again, I really enjoyed this movie. I thought the acting was great. I thought the action was great. The flow of it was great. Everything was just really well done. The parts that weren't, of course, were, you know, not as well done, but, for what it's worth, it's nothing that's outright awful. Like, I could still stomach it. It's just that I wish it would be done better. Um, if nothing else, I just love seeing everything get tied up in such a nice way, and it is nice that there was references to stuff that we didn't even expect to see. Like, we even get to see a callback to Iron Man 3, which, I know Marvel doesn't necessarily hate that movie. I mean, especially considering that Tony's whole arc has been building up since then, but it's something that I wasn't really expecting too much. That being said, yeah, it's a really good movie. I don't know what else I can really say about it. Again, I don't want to go into like too much into the whole spoiler stuff beyond just what I feel like I need to say. I don't want to do any theories. I don't want to do any of that. So, yeah, Avengers Endgame, great movie. Go watch it. Near perfect. It has its flaws. I still prefer Infinity War, but for what it's worth, it is a nice way to round off the story. And to be honest, how many stories have have their best story being the last story? Not too often. So, I can stomach with this, and I can live with it being, you know, a great way to end off this version of the Avengers. So, you know, good for them. That's all I really feel like saying. Good for them.